Hello, everyone, and welcome in to the Go 24/7 live edition. Bryce Koon alongside Dylan Sanders. LSU big winners in Stark Vegas. Dylan, let's rock and roll. Let's talk about this. A big win. Wanted to get your opening thoughts, but before we do, make sure to subscribe to the channel wherever you're watching. If you're tuning in on Facebook tonight, we appreciate you. Make sure that you're following and liking us on the Facebook page. If you're on YouTube, we want to make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. Dylan, 63% of the people who watch our content aren't even subscribed. It costs nothing. Completely free. Just do that. Hit the notification bell. That's going to be right down below Dylan. And then if you're listening to this after the fact on any of our podcast platforms, we appreciate you as well. Action-packed jam show. About 30 minutes or so. We're going to rock and roll as we give our thoughts on tonight or last night's, not yesterday afternoon's game. We'll call it. Bryce Koon, Dylan Sanders. Dylan, let's rock and roll here. Your thoughts from this matchup. The offense looked good. We're going to take a look specifically at each position group in we'll take offense and defense. We got some stuff planned. When you look at this, brother, where do you roll? How do you feel about this game overall, kind of leaving maybe the day after?
I feel like I'm leaving fall camp after a day of seeing the offense really start to roll, the defense have a nice day, kind of trading blows, and then, getting ready to be like, hey guys, this team's different. Like, they're going to throw it down the field. They're going to get the ball to the playmakers. And of course, after week one, that didn't happen. And everybody yelled at us and everybody started to go crazy. And then, week two happened, but everyone said, well, it's against Grambling. Well, now it's SEC play. Jaden looks great. Great's an understatement for how Jaden looked. Malik Neighbors had his coming out party for the season. The defense did about as good of a job as you could possibly ask against an SEC West opponent. Just the vibes are much, much higher than they were maybe 2 weeks ago. Because right now, LSU looks like one of the more hopeful teams in college football in general. Not even just the SEC West, like the SEC in total in college football. Like LSU's vibing. LSU's looking good. They're people have already forgotten that they looked really bad in that one half against Florida State, and instead now everyone's like really excited about what they just saw against Mississippi State.
Yeah, I think that, look, first off, you hit the nail right on the head, just the ability to come out and do what you needed to do. Brian Kelly talked about in the post game, saying essentially, look, he joked, not that we read everything that necessarily is said, but obviously this kind of creeped in that, what this defense couldn't do, what this team couldn't do. And they went out, like you said, and I talked about it last week on the show. First off, glad you're feeling better. But I talked about it last week on the show. You needed to be able to replicate your performance against Grambling State offensively against a better opponent. You did that. Now, let's set the record straight. Is Mississippi State the most vaunted opponent? No, I don't think so. Are they the opponent that is going to maybe challenge you the most this year? No, I don't think so. But what I do believe kind of in the whole idea in the grand scheme of things is that this is a process-oriented mindset that you have to have with the LSU offense and the LSU team. It's not results-based. It's not, or I should say, not. You can't be result-oriented. You can't just look for results. Process-oriented in the sense that, look, game number one, you looked pretty good for a half, maybe 2.5 quarters. After that, it just didn't work out for you against a really, really good football team. All jokes aside of what Boston College was, able to accomplish against Florida State. This is what you did against a really, really good football team. That being said, you get into week two, you straighten some things out in front of a home crowd against a, on paper, less than opponent, an inferior opponent. Now you have a challenge to go in a road environment. Dylan, I'm going to tell you, the fans, it was loud. I mean, obviously the cowbells, obviously everything you got going on, but it was a very loud, hostile atmosphere for about the first 15 minutes or so. And then LSU imposed their will. That's one thing that I loved about this team. Imposed their will for a full 60 minutes. It felt like they dominated. And it's a process. They're building up into what they're going to try to accomplish this upcoming weekend back in Death Valley with a home game against Arkansas. And then obviously, my eyes are on the matchup. I'm not trying to get too far ahead, but what potentially could be happening in 2 weeks where, you talk about the SEC West, the two best teams in the SEC West, when you kind of look at the resume and what they've been able to do right now, you're probably going to sit there and say it's Ole Miss and LSU. And so that game, what those two teams have been able to do so far and up to this point, if they can get unblemished. If Ole Miss can beat Alabama on the road, if LSU takes care of business at home this weekend against Arkansas, going to be something to keep an eye out on. So let's kind of talk about this. Two keys, two things we'll kind of cover in tonight's show, and I think it starts well. Dylan, I want to ask you this. Defensively, everyone's looked at the numbers. We've got the PFF grades over on our website. LSU's defense can be special if. Finish that sentence for me. What has to happen for this defense to continue to move in a positive direction and be special?
Use Harold Perkins like you used him against Mississippi State. Do you want to know the beautiful thing about this game is that Harold Perkins' pass rushing snaps doubled his coverage snaps. And whenever you have a player like Harold Perkins, you use him like you use him in coverage from time to time. Like that's not something you're going to abandon. He's athletic. He has good size. He can cover. He plays a lot in the slot. Like you want him to cover sometimes. But whenever you have him on the pass rush being complemented by Mekhi Wingo, who has to be, again, given a shout out as probably the best defensive lineman on this team, as some people were saying before the season, and has now only been seen proven right during the season. He's been maybe the most consistent defender on the team. The pass rush in general was there. So LSU's defense can be special if they find the success that they had in the pass rush and use the players like they used them. I thought that this was exactly what we needed to see in terms of like a scheme kind of benefit.
Yeah.
I very much liked it.
Yeah, look, I'll echo you about this. And first off, I want to shout out because we got my man Static Shadow in the comments. Appreciate you tuning in. Make sure to get your comments, questions in. We're going to answer those if there are some towards the end of the program. You talked about defensively the pass rush. Savion Jones looked really, really good off the edge in this game against Mississippi State. Now, once again, I understand the opponent, Dylan. It's just Grambling. It's just Mississippi State. I understand it. I get it. I get the jokes. I understand that. But all of this to say is, you have a chance in this game upcoming against Arkansas to continue the momentum for me that I saw out of a linebacking core that found something maybe against Mississippi State they desperately were maybe missing. Look, Omar Spates, fantastic player at Oregon State. Early on has provided great leadership, great, being a veteran mentor to some of the younger players. West Weeks is good. And West Weeks has, and Brian Kelly talked about this, West Weeks has that sideline-to-sideline speed. He is a guy that I think they're allowing to kind of, just go, hey, see ball, hit ball. Like, that's what he's playing, see ball, play ball. Like, that's kind of what he's playing right now. Now, LSU obviously had a guy last season that was able to do that. I don't think West Weeks or maybe anyone's going to be able to do what Harold Perkins did in year one. I don't know, Dylan. Wes Weeks for this defense. If you have legitimate, and it's a question I'm going to ask Kelly tomorrow, if you have the opportunity to have some legitimate in-season competition, not because things are bad, but because things are so potentially good at the linebacker position, look, it goes hand in hand what you just talked about. Moving Harold Perkins down, now you could have a opportunity where I thought Greg Penn played really well in this game. Do you keep Greg Penn in the slot if it's in that spot if Spates is not completely 100%? Weeks, those two guys together. Honestly, both Weeks. Wes Weeks gets the start of the freshman. Whit Weeks kind of more veteran player, but obviously both of these guys kind of have that heat-seeking missile. So all of that to say is I round in what you said. LSU's defense can be special if this front seven continues to take steps. And it's a quarterback in Will Rogers. Personally, I respected, and I still respect Will Rogers. Like, I think that he is a good quarterback. Mississippi State's got a lot of things going on of their transition of what they're trying to be in their identity. 9 total yards on the first 5 drives. Dylan, I don't care if you're playing Baton Rouge Community College. That is something that is very, very hard to do if you are a college football team to hold that. So it doesn't matter who your opponent is. I don't know. I liked the intensity. I liked the violence that these guys played with. Because, look, you got Harold Perkins, and I looked over at Glenn and a couple of the writers during the game. I said, I like the fact that Harold Perkins just wants to smoke constantly. Like, it doesn't matter. And I love that. And the swagger of this defense. You didn't see that in week one, especially towards the end of the game. It kind of felt like they were able to do that in that second half, which I think was a big story. I mean, your thoughts on that, to be able to come out in that second half and continue to dominate?
Well, I mean, I think that there's a guy that we should give a shout out to that we haven't yet. And it was a guy that didn't get a lot of shout outs on the broadcast, but that's a positive thing. Denver Harris. He came out and had easily, I mean, he has 2 games as an LSU Tiger, but this was easily his best performance as an LSU Tiger. Targeted twice, no catches given up. Huge. That's huge for a guy like that because, the talent's there with Denver Harris. There's been no question of, can this dude play? It's, can he get on the field and can he unlock that potential? And this was a great first step in doing that. And obviously having the pass rush helps. It's all a unit. It's called a unit for a reason. You need all of your pieces to be playing together. And whenever you have the pass rush working, whenever you have Denver Harris playing up to his skill level in coverage, it makes even like a Zy Alexander or a Deuce Chestnut or Greg Brooks whenever he gets healthy, it makes everyone's job easier whenever you have a side of the field locked down and then you have your pass rush working. And that's what we saw. We saw an offense that was struggling and doesn't really have an identity meet a team that is now working together and playing at kind of the heights of what you can see from that defense. They were hungry. They attacked them. They did not let them breathe. They didn't let them make mistakes.
It wasn't like they were waiting for something to happen. They imposed their will. And I think that was something big. And kind of to tag along with what you just said there, defensively, you talk about the secondary. Like, I think it's understood that this secondary is not what LSU fans are maybe used to. There's not a guy that is going to be the next model of DBU currently, unless some things change. And look, teams can evolve over the course of a season. Maybe one of these younger guys just needed to get his feet wet and get some reps in and take his lumps. But if that is the case, like if this secondary is not going to be elite, what you mentioned right there, the identity of a pass rush and what that front seven can do, it's everything that I think the entire staff has thought, and our entire staff at Go 24/7 has thought going into the Florida State game. Like, I don't know if the concerns about the back seven will outweigh what's happening with that front four, because if that front four can play like they did, I mean, Dylan, at one point, this group was rolling out Mekhi Wingo and Mason Smith as 2 down linemen. You had Harold Perkins on the edge, and you'd have Braden Swinson on the edge in run situations. When you got to 3rd down, they put in Deshaun Womack, who another young player that looked really good. I mean, that's a scary, scary front four, not counting for guys like, Weeks that they brought on blitz a couple times. So all of that to say, I wanted to shout another guy in the secondary, Andre Sam. We saw some of the closing speed, especially on a big 3rd down play. That's what we saw in fall camp. So that's another thing. Maybe this group had an opportunity to prove, their worth and prove what they knew. And that's something Kelly talked about. And I got an article coming about it on Monday morning. Maybe this game, they just needed to win this one. And Kelly said it so they could say, you know what we believe about ourselves inside this locker room now transpires to the public. Not that they're going to take too much stock in what the public thinks, but I don't know. That's just kind of where I sat with it. That's what I thought about it. I think the defense went out there and proved a point.
The cornerbacks per PFF gave up 20 yards in coverage snaps last game. Well, if you count Sage Ryan as a safety, what he's listed at? He plays kind of like that nickel back role, but I mean that's just like a far cry from what we saw in week 1. I mean, and again, this offense isn't working, but you still have to, you have to execute. But I mean, it doesn't matter who you're playing against. It's hard to make a team look as poor as Mississippi State looked. Heading into that one rush by Jaquavius Marks at the end of the half, they were giving up 0.4 yards per play. Like, that doesn't happen by accident, and that doesn't happen just because an offense doesn't really know what they're doing. This is a quarterback who's played years of football. Most likely, if you're not really playing up to snuff, he's going to be able to complete a couple passes, but that just wasn't the case against the cornerbacks.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think that, they did a good job. We didn't have to talk about their names a lot during the game because of the front seven. But look, you're going to be tested. And I mentioned, I don't know if Arkansas is necessarily going to test you in this, but Ole Miss will. Ole Miss is going to test you through the air, especially with what Jackson Dart was able to do this past weekend. And I think, if he can build some momentum, especially in that Alabama game, that is going to be a very big litmus test. Maybe we'll call it the midterm. You had your entrance exam against Florida State. Now you got your midterm potentially against Ole Miss and obviously Alabama as well. I know we got a question on Alabama. We're going to get to that at the end of the show. Once again, if you're watching, we appreciate it. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever it might be. Quick note for you. If you're watching on Twitter and you want to put in a comment, you're going to have to head over to Facebook or YouTube to get that comment visible to us here on the stream. Let's flip over to the offensive side of the football there, Dylan, where, look, the offense showed explosiveness. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, LSU didn't need anybody on the field except for Malik Neighbors, but a guy that I'm excited about is just kind of slowly making some strides, and it's Brian Thomas Jr., who had a nice day, 6 catches, I believe, for 70 yards. I need to double-check that to make sure. Let me go back to my stats and info here. 7 catches, 60 yards. Had my numbers mixed up. 7 catches, 60 yards to kind of offset, obviously, what Neighbors will do. 13 catches for 239 yards. Dylan, he was targeted 13 times, and he caught every single ball. Jaden Daniels, so good. Perfect. Listen to me, folks, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. 30 of 34 overall. He was perfect on passes 20 yards or more. So the comments, the concerns, can he do this? He showed you he can. Now, is it a decision-making process? Maybe that he's a little timid to it sometimes. Maybe so, and that's a valid argument. But this game showed you that he can go down the field, Dylan. 30 of 34, 361 through the air, 2 touchdowns. And then on the ground, he had another 2 scores and 64 yards. I mean, Jaden Daniels probably had his best game as a college quarterback. I don't know if that is even a debate.
What this gave shades of, I know you weren't around here, but I mean, I'm sure you remember the game where Ty Davis Price, they just ran him to the left against Florida, and he had 300 yards. Against all you needed to do for Malik Neighbors was be like, all right, stutter go, and then run down, and Jaden's going to throw it to you for an easy. What are the easiest pitches and catches that you're going to see all season long? It was automatic. If I had a big old easy button, I'd be pressing it. The play sheet did not need to look very intense against Mississippi State. Like it was an easy game on offense, which means it was a fun game to watch because Malik Neighbors was just doing insane things. He was. And yeah, this is, again, a Mississippi State defense, an SEC defense, SEC players, SEC athletes. He made them look like Grambling. I mean, honestly, if you take the score away and you have me watch, it looks Mississippi State was making LSU was making Mississippi State look more like Grambling than Grambling looked like Grambling. Like it did not look like on the same level of player. So shout out to Malik Neighbors and shout out to Jaden for doing what we preached that they had been saying that they were going to do. Yeah. This was the game. I think it was a huge confidence builder in terms of throwing down the field, in terms of standing in the pocket, taking hits, because what we can get to in a little bit is like, this was not a great game for the offensive line. That was the big down point, but it didn't matter. In one of the worst performances that you saw from the offensive line that you're going to see, Will Campbell's human, as someone on our board posted. Daniels took that contact and still went downfield. He stayed in the pocket. He found his receivers. This is exactly the type of performance that everyone, and more so that the fans or like the talking heads needed to see. I think this is the performance Jaden needed to see. He can do it. His receivers can do it. He can trust his receivers. His receivers can trust Jaden. It was a huge trust building performance because now later in the season, if it's a closer game, Jaden's going to be able to think back to this game and be like, I trusted it. I took the hits and I found the targets and it worked out. Like, I have nothing to be afraid of. I have the great players that LSU affords me to have on my team, and I can do this.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm with you there. I think that the trust factor. He's got something. He's got data points to lean back on. Now after
Mhm.
this game, once again, Mississippi State. I think that this is more of a result of Daniels and Neighbors and what they can do, rather than Mississippi State just being abysmal. Like I don't think Mississippi State's that bad. I think they got a lot of things to work on. I do question the decision, and Malik Neighbors joked about it in post game press conferences, and so did Brian Kelly. I don't know why they played press man against him. Like I don't know. Like that's an interesting thought process to go about, but that's what they did.
We talked about it
Yeah,
last week that LSU didn't feel comfortable playing press man against Grambling, and that was an
yeah,
issue. And this is why they weren't playing press man against Grambling is like, this is what happens if you're not ready to play press man. But Mississippi State was just like, well, we're gonna keep doing it.
yeah.
Uh,
No, hands
and it
down,
didn't work. It didn't work.
hands
Stop
down.
doing it.
Couple of numbers. You start to look kind of the average yards per completion for LSU in that game, 11.8. The yards per rush, that was one of the numbers I was looking at. I felt like they needed to get around 4.5. They got 4.2. Dylan, you mentioned not a great game from the offensive line. You didn't have to lean on the running backs in this game. Jane
Mm-mm.
Daniels, your leading rusher, but Logan Diggs averaged 4.6 yards per carry. When you gave him the opportunity and put the football in his hands, he was able to do some things. Josh Williams had a touchdown carry. Caleb Jackson with a Fournette esque. I mean, just oh my
What a
gosh!
play!
Like there was an audible in the press box. It's an outdoor press box out there in Starkville. There was an audible like when it happened. And I'm gonna expose him. Glenn goes, "Oh my gosh!" And like in the seat next to me because it was just one of those plays. He's unbelievable. Diggs did nice in the passing game as well. Three catches for 30 yards. Caleb Jackson 2 catches for 15 yards. All of this to say is, I think that I put some grades out on our website. I gave an A- for the offense because one, it's going to be hard to get an A+ from me. My mom was a tough grader when she was a teacher, so I've learned a thing or two. And I think moving forward, like this was about a greater performance you could have had in the passing game, offense for Jane Daniels. They might have scored 60 or 70 points if the run game would have just broken up. I mean, they did a good 4.2 yards per carry is great, but I think that there's going to come a time and place where a team is going to force you to run the football. And can you do it? Can you get the 3rd down and 2 with a running back? They're going to try to take Jaden Daniels out of the equation. That's how you beat LSU. Like if I'm a defensive coordinator, I got to let someone else other than Jaden Daniels beat me. Daniels and Neighbors. Someone else is going to have to beat me. That's what I would look at it as.
I
But
mean,
offensively,
the
there.
thing is can you stop Jaden Daniels' legs?
Yeah, I don't know.
Who's
That
done it? Like
yeah,
like who can do it? And I mean, I think of one player that can do it, and he's also in purple and gold. So I
and
don't really,
Harold Perkins.
don't know who you're don't know who does that. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
if this is what the team looks like, and I'm not talking about the 300 yards for I'm not talking about the 300 yards for Malik Neighbors. If it just looks like you're getting some run game help, the passing game's working, Jaden's running, you can do good things, and we've seen the offensive line is better than what they looked like
yeah,
against
yeah.
Mississippi State.
Yeah, I think
You know,
one of it was those guys playing in that loud of an atmosphere. I think that's one thing that you kind of have to look at it as. But I think overall the offense was a bright spot. I really like it's complete effort all the way around. Let's get to the last topic, Dylan, and then we'll take a couple questions. I know that we got in the chat. Make sure to get them in before we get out of here. Just a couple more minutes here on the live stream. Once again, we're going to be doing these every single Sunday night. Going to be a lot of fun to talk with you all, kind of a day after approach. Where does LSU go from here? Dylan, I know we're going to have great preview content, podcasting, and everything, stuff over on the social channels and everything about the matchup with Arkansas coming up. But for you, where does LSU go from here? I mean, I think I'll set you up. I think they got to continue the momentum. Like this was a big momentum. In the sense of getting the SEC win, and now you get to come back home against an Arkansas team that lost to BYU, really, really struggles in the offensive line. Look, if I'm going, and I'm going to dive more into that this week, if I'm looking at that, I'm licking my chops if I'm Makai Wingo. Like I'm if I'm Mason Smith, I'm like, oh man, we're about to have a day. Harold Perkins, Savion Jones, all of these guys. I think it has potential to be a big day in Baton Rouge if they execute.
I think that LSU needs to focus on where does LSU go from here? focusing on bringing back that 1-0 mentality, because you're looking good right now. But and everyone, the line is crazy big for the Arkansas game. LSU favored by like 17 points, something like that.
I think it's 17
It,
and a half. Yeah.
yeah, it's something crazy. Even if you win this, people are gonna, you'll be back in the top 10. But what I think everyone needs to remember and needs to focus on is that you have two really tough road games in the SEC coming up back to back. Everyone, laughed preseason whenever you mentioned Mizzou. They're going to be a 5-0 team. They're likely going to be a 5-0 team whenever LSU takes stand against them. Ole Miss is looking, like one of the better teams in the SEC. So I think it's just LSU needs to focus on taking it week to week and building on performance after performance. There were still things to like in the Florida State game. There were obviously a 72-10 win. There were a lot of things to like about the Grambling win, and there were a lot of things to like about the last one. Don't get complacent. Jaden said after the Florida State game, they thought that it was going to be easy. Don't bring that mindset to any other game. Like, take the grit that y'all have talked, that Brian Kelly's talked about, the wanting, the contact in practice. Take those mindsets and build upon it. Don't throw it out the building now that you're looking like a good team again. Just build on your performances and take it week to week. That's where I think LSU needs to go from here.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think you use this as a launching pad. This is not your ceiling. This is just a glimpse into what you can be this season. And I like what you said. Offensively, not staying complacent. Not saying that I had the big 300-yard passing game or Malik Neighbors. And I don't think that's these guys' mindsets. It's just really easy to rest on that. But now I think they know, the team knows. And I'll tell you one thing: Arkansas knows too. And, it's going to be very interesting to see how they scheme against, LSU. But that's going to be a fun one. Saturday night in Death Valley, going to be a ton of fun. LSU, Arkansas. First real big, first SEC game at home. My first SEC game at home inside the confines of
you, Bryce.
Yeah, inside the friendly confines of Tiger Stadium. Well, to home fans at least. Let's get to a couple questions before we get out of here. Once again, appreciate you. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, make sure to like the video, share it as well with your friends. Once again, Static Shadow just dominating the comments. How are we feeling about the Bama game later this season? We're going to talk more about this, so I don't want to spoil it. It's a winnable game. Alabama's got a lot of things to figure out, but I will tell you, Dylan, last time I checked, I just checked my watch, it's September 17th. November 4th is still a long way away. And and so I don't know. I can't sit here and tell you. I do think it's going to be very, very interesting. Sherman Brown, appreciate you for tuning in. Is it just me or is Andre Sam looking better than Brooks? It's like he's a heat-seeking missile. I think Andre Sam brings a lot to the table. Greg Brooks, obviously not available for this game, and I'm sure, or you hope, obviously, to kind of hear more about that as the week goes on to what his availability. I don't think just for this week, but kind of going forward, what the situation is. Brody Ross over on Facebook. Jaden looked nice. You know what, Brody? Your Facebook profile picture looks really nice. Let's keep it rolling here. Static. Let's say that LSU wins out and is SEC champions. The College Football Playoff. Yes, a one-loss SEC champion is making the College Football Playoff. I would argue, in a certain situation, a two-loss SEC champion would get it, and that would have been LSU last year if they would have been able to beat A&M and beat Georgia as well. Fantastic. Love this profile picture. What's the status of Rocket Sanders for Saturday? We're going to talk about that in our preview podcast. We're also going to have a Behind the Enemy Lines podcast. Rocket Sanders, obviously a big part of what Arkansas wanted to do coming in. He's kind of been banged up. It'd be very interesting to see if he plays. I think if he doesn't play, it's going to be kind of interesting to see where those things go. Aaron Adams, great to see the team progress in pretty much all areas game to game. It's something Dylan and I've been talking about. Like I 110% agree. Progression. Listen, folks, I'm going to say it again. It's about a process-oriented mindset rather than result-oriented. You got to have a process-oriented mindset with this team because I think they have a chance to get better and better. And teams evolve or devolve over the course of a season. Obviously, LSU fans hoping to see that positive. Stuart West enjoyed the show, guys. Stuart enjoyed you being a part of the show. And then Aaron as well as we rounded out. Hope these type of wins help recruiting efforts. We'll pause right here. I mentioned, picked up 3 text messages. 2 of them from 3 text messages 2 from current commits, 1 from a prize jewel in the 2025 class that I think they'd love to get after that Caleb Jackson hit. So, Aaron, to your point, hands down, anytime you win, and if LSU continues this trend, it's a great selling point. And I think that guys like Sherman Williams, Bobby Barham, Will Redmond, all of these guys, like on this recruiting staff, they love seeing what they saw because now it says, okay, I get to take this and now I get to go sell it to, kids in Louisiana, top kids outside the state of Louisiana as well. Dylan,
This
your
is
final thoughts.
As I say, and on that the recruiting standpoint, be sure to check the boards all week this week, and especially after the Arkansas game. This is a huge recruiting weekend for LSU, so you're going to want to know all of the ins and outs and what we hear and see about the progress that the staff is making with some key guys coming in. There's going to be a ton of players and a ton of future guys coming in this weekend. So stick to our boards, go 24/7, and you're going to see some great things, I think, this weekend.
Very much. Get a great deal. $1 first month. You need to take advantage of that. We need to get some DBs, young guys, and some portal studs to help out. I think so. You got to see how these guys develop, though. You got to see. Look, that's just my mindset. That's kind of how I roll with this. It's week 3, ladies and gentlemen. We got a long way for the season's over. I think by November, you're going to have a better idea of, for the future, what guys you can slot in, what guys maybe they leave through the portal, maybe they leave elsewhere. But I do agree with you. I think that defensive back room is going to be one that you're going to need to build a lot of depth, and Kelly and them are working on that as well. For Dylan Sanders, my name is Bryce Koon. We appreciate you so much for hanging out with us here on a Sunday evening. Dylan, the Saints not playing until tomorrow night. My team got a big dub over on Fox this other day.
I got Bijan in fantasy, so
Bijan Robinson's nasty. Absolutely nasty. My guy Preston Guy, what a duo. It's the dynamic duo, Preston. We can't wait to have more content. Appreciate you there. It was a great show as well. We're going to be once again live every single Sunday evening. We're still thinking of a name for this live show, whether it's the day after, whatever it is. I don't know. LSU Live. We're going to be going live every single Sunday night, recapping the game that was the previous weekend and kind of giving some nuggets as well. A couple things before we get out of here. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're continuing to climb in numbers as well. Fantastic numbers. You guys are killing it in the podcast game as well. So whether it's Apple, Spotify, leave us a 5-star review or a 1-star review if you want Dylan to grow his hair back out. I don't know what it is, but if you'd like to do that, and make sure the Facebook page as well that you're liking and setting up notifications all over the place. And last but certainly not least, down in the link below, you can find Go 24/7. We've got a great VIP deal that you need to take advantage of. I think it's $1 for the first month. Fantastic content. It helps feed Dylan, so that's also something that you could help him.
I'm hungry,
and he's hungry, so you can help with that.
6:30. I need dinner. So please get to. If about 6 of y'all go right now, that's about $6. I could go get like a Taco Bell combo meal. So there you go. The clock's ticking, guys. I need to get some dinner.
I got to go pick up my wings before Sunday night football. That's all I know.
I don't graduate for a couple more months. One recruit is 4 nights of ramen.
There you go.
So I'm just saying,
it is what it is.
A single dollar.
$1. We appreciate y'all so much. Thanks so much for tuning in. Bryce Koon alongside Dylan Sanders. We'll catch you next time here on the Go 24/7